Thank you. Good morning. How about we give it up for Jesus? You guys, come on. He deserves a lot better, bigger applause than that. Come on. Let's give it up for Jesus. Yeah. First, let me start by saying thank you, President Barry. Thank you, Scott. Thank you, Biola, for having me. It's always a privilege and an honor when I'm asked to share. And as Scott has alluded to, this is not an easy subject to talk about. I don't know what everyone in this place right now sitting here believes. Maybe you're pro-choice, even at a Christian college, because I've seen that at Christian colleges and at Christian high schools that I visit. Maybe you're staunchly pro-life. Maybe you're in the middle, you just don't know, you think it's a woman's right, whatever, you have different opinions. And what I'm here today is not to be political because I'm not a politician. I am just a woman who has a story to share from the bottom of my heart and pray that it makes a difference, that when you leave here, you're different than when you walked in. And as Scott also said, there are people to help you, and I'm glad that he brought that up because it may stir some things in you. This is a subject that always gets people's attention. Sometimes maybe you're sitting here and you've had an abortion in your past, or you know somebody who has, and you've been affected by it. And it's not unusual for you to get emotional or not understand what you're feeling. So please reach out to me as well. You can reach out to me at my email, which is victoria@savethestorks.com. And I want to put that out there now so that in case we forget at the end. I also have cards here. If you want to come up afterwards and say hi to me, I'll be glad to give you that. And it has information on it as well to get in touch with me. So I have 4 children. They are all boys, except for 4 of them. Come on, you're college students. Surely you get that. My oldest daughter is 36 years old. She has 3 children, so I have 3 grandchildren from her. My second daughter is 34 almost. She has a little boy that's 2, and she's due at any moment with twin girls. So if I get the call, I'm going to have to say, see ya. Actually, I live in Nashville, Tennessee, so I probably wouldn't make it. My third daughter just had a baby. She lives in Maui with her husband, and their little girl is 2 months old, Monroe Grace. My youngest daughter is 22, and she has a boyfriend, but no husband yet. But, he could be the one. I don't know. Oh, this is being taped, isn't it? I'll make sure that they don't watch it. But he's a keeper, so I'm okay with him. He's mommy approved. I have been in the pro-life work for over 20 years. I started out as a pregnancy center volunteer, and I want to tell you about my journey of how I got there. 32 years ago, I was a single mom with 2 little girls. They were 9 months old and 3 when their father decided he didn't want to be married anymore. So he actually left us in North Carolina and came to your fine town. He moved out here to LA and left us there alone, abandoned, without any way to take care of ourselves. So I had to go to work for 12 to 14 hours a day. And the reason that this part of my story I want you to hear is because I'm going to build up to where I'm going so that you understand the mentality of where I was. So when he left, I had to start working, dropping them off at 6 in the morning at daycare and picking them up 7 o'clock at night, and it was tough. They cried and held onto my legs every time I dropped them off, and when I arrived, they were right there so happy to see their mommy. It was really a difficult time in my life. My self-esteem was shot to pieces. My husband had left. He didn't want to be married. He never came to visit his own children, and many times they were sitting on the porch waiting for Daddy to come because he had promised to show up, and he never did. And I'd have to drag them and beg them to come in the house and get ready for bed and hear them over and over say, Daddy forgot us again. So it was a really hard time in my life. I felt very alone and very defeated. So when I met this guy at a gym that I was working at, I fell in love quickly, and so did he. And we started dating, and we got sexually active a couple months into our relationship, if that. I was so sure he was the one I was going to put my teeth in a jar with one day. Yeah. That means we were going to grow old together. I was so sure of it. So when I found out 9 months into the relationship that I was pregnant, I was terrified because I was already struggling to take care of the 2 children I had. But I felt some sense of hope because I thought, this guy loves me so much, and now we're going to have our own baby. But when I went to tell him I was pregnant, he wasn't as excited about it. And he brought up the word abortion. I had never considered myself pro-choice before. As a matter of fact, I had a friend who had had 7 abortions and used it as birth control. And we had many, many debates and arguments about how can you keep getting pregnant and then going and having an abortion? Stop getting pregnant. It really angered me. But now here I was in a crisis, not knowing what I was going to do. And I was terrified. So when he brought up the word abortion, he said, it's not a good time for us. I think you need to explore that option. Well, he loved me. I loved him. It made sense. I was already struggling. I was so early in my pregnancy. And it was legal. So I called the abortion clinic in Charlotte, North Carolina. And the woman on the other end was very kind to me. She was very sweet. I told her my story about my husband leaving. Now I've met this guy. I'm struggling to put food on the table. I'm working 12, 14 hours a day. And she was so, so sympathetic to me. And she said, honey, don't you think it'd be really selfish of you to bring another mouth to feed when you're trying so hard to feed the 2 you've got? Besides, you're so early in your pregnancy, it's not really a baby anyway. It's just like a blob of tissue, a clump of cells. There's nothing there. So let's get you in right away and we'll take care of that for you over here. So I made the appointment after about an hour conversation, told my boyfriend about the appointment, told him it was a couple days later. Could he take me? He said, oh, sorry, I'll be out of town. So on a Saturday morning, I lied to my babysitter and told her I was going shopping. I hadn't told anyone what I was about to do. Girls, if there's something you're about to do and you aren't willing to tell your mother, that's called a clue. So I drove myself to that abortion clinic, about 20, 25 minutes from my house. And I can tell you that just like yesterday, I can remember having my hand on my stomach, apologizing to my unborn child, telling this baby, this was the best thing for you. I don't want to bring you into this mess. That woman said it'd be selfish of me. She's right. I'm doing the best thing for you. This is the best decision for you. Please forgive me for what I'm about to do, but it really is for the best. You don't want any part of the life of a mess that my life is right now. So when I pulled into the abortion clinic, there were no picketers there. There were no prayer warriors. There was nobody there to talk some sense into me, or at least to tell me about other options. I blamed them for a long time. So I walked in that abortion clinic and there were girls lined up on the seats in the waiting room. Nobody was looking at each other. Everybody was looking either at the floor or pretending to read magazines. But no one looked right or looked left. Even though we all knew why we were there, no one looked at one another. They called my name into the first room. That's the room where you talk to the woman and give her your money. She was actually the same woman I had talked to on the phone a few days earlier who was so kind to me. She pretended like she knew me. Maybe she did, I don't know. And I'm crying the whole time, sitting there holding tightly onto my $350 cash. Because at that time, you had to bring cash. They didn't take credit cards. Or this clinic didn't. And I looked at her and I said, are you sure this is okay? I already have 2 children. I know the outcome of a pregnancy. Are you sure I'm making the right choice? And she took my hand in hers and she said, honey, it's like I told you on the phone. There's nothing there. You're only 6 weeks pregnant. We will take care of this for you in a matter of minutes. You'll be good to go. And when you leave here, never think of this again. Honey, would our government allow this to be legal if it could harm you? And I just cried and handed her my money. When I tell you that her countenance changed as soon as she had the cash in her hand, she looked at me and said, "Just so you know, if you change your mind when you're lying on the table, you don't get your money back because we don't give refunds here." I walked out, waited for my fictitious name to be called. Another clue. I don't even remember the name I made up. They called me into the next room, said, "Get undressed, put this gown on, and sit here on the table. The doctor will be in a minute." I want to paint a visual for you about how ugly abortion is. Because you need to understand, it is not the lie that has been fed to our country for decades. As I sat there waiting for this doctor to come in, silently crying to myself, honestly wishing my boyfriend would come charging through the door and say, "Don't do it. I love you. Let's have our baby." Just needed and wanted someone so desperately to rescue me. But they never came. The doctor walked in, looked at me, said, "Lay down, scoot down, and spread your legs." I did as I was told. I looked up at the ceiling. Tears continued to flow. And I wanted to scream. I've changed my mind. I wanted to say, I want to go. I want out of here. But do you know what? At that moment, I was so afraid of offending them to tell them I wanted to go. So I lay there, waiting for it to be over, and I heard the machine. This loud machine. And within minutes, my baby was gone. And as the doctor was walking out, I said, "Excuse me, can you tell me, was it a boy, was it a girl?" He turned around and said, "I don't have time for this. You were too early. I couldn't tell. I'm busy," and walked out. The nurse said, "Come on, we need to take you to the next room for recovery." So I went into this next room, and I want you to visualize a room, a little bit, maybe half the size of this one, lined with rows and rows of cots. And on every single one was a young woman. And the wailing that you could hear from that room is one I'll never get out of my head. Some girls were holding their stomachs, bent over. Some were silently crying. Some looked like they were in shock. No one looked empowered. Nobody looked free. I lasted a few minutes. I told them, "I want to get out of here." "No, you need to stay for 30. "No, I want to get out of here. I don't want to be here." I grabbed my things. I ran out the door. And as soon as I got on the elevator, I knew as I fell to the floor, your life will never be the same. What have you done? For over 10 years, I never got help from that abortion. I started getting involved in abusive relationships because I thought I deserved to be cheated on. I deserved to be knocked around. Because what kind of woman could kill her own child? I believed God hated me. I believed God would never forgive me. I believed God could never use someone like me after what I had done. But there was this sweet little woman named Mary who was a member of the church I started attending, looking and searching for my pain to be gone. And for whatever reason, she took a liking to me, and she'd come to me several times for 3 years. And she would say, "You need to come and be a volunteer at our local pregnancy center. You'd be so great with the young people, Victoria. You do so well in our youth group here." And she'd go on, and I'd say, "I will one day, Mary, one day." But in the back of my mind, I thought, what are you doing to me, God? Are you wanting to torture me? Now you want me to go volunteer at a pregnancy center so I can be reminded every day what I did? And every time I'd be involved in women's ministry, these women would come to me in church and they'd say, "Can I talk to you, Victoria?" And they'd whisper in my ear, "I've had an abortion. Can you pray for me?" And I'd pray for them and I'd watch God completely change them. I'd watch him forgive them and their countenance would change. They'd walk out different than when they came in, but yet I was still suffering. So I was angry with God. And I'd go home and say, "Why do you torture me? Do you hate me this much? Why am I the woman they seek out when you know my secret?" And one sweet day, in his grace and in his mercy, as I was yelling and screaming at him, Mary's face appeared in my mind. And I felt that still small voice saying, "I've been trying." So I called Mary the next day and I started volunteering at the pregnancy center. It took me 6 months to finally confess to her that I was post-abortive. And when I did, she looked at me and said, "I've already known." I'm like, "Is it tattooed on my head? I mean, how did you know?" She said, "I just knew, and I've been waiting for you to tell me so we can get you in post-abortion counseling so you can be free, so you can accept God's forgiveness and his healing and watch what he's going to do with your life." And that's exactly what I did. I went through post-abortion counseling and I finally realized that God still loved me. That God could even forgive for abortion. That his grace and mercy surpasses it all. And I said to him then, "You send me wherever you want to send me, and I will share my story so that my child will not have died in vain." I can tell you, since I started 20 years ago now, over sharing my story and ministering to men and women who are post-abortive or considering abortion, my child has saved thousands of other children who wouldn't be here. Because that's how good our God is. He is merciful, and he takes what the enemy means for evil to destroy us, and he turns it into good. So yes, I am pro-life, and I am proud of it, and I don't apologize. And I have pro-choice friends too, and they support what I do, but they still are pro-choice, staunchly pro-choice, and that is their right. The thing that people need to understand about God, that most of us in this room know, is he's given us free will to choose to do whatever we want with our bodies, with our lives. But what we don't get to choose are the consequences of those choices. The Bible says all things are permissible, but not all things are beneficial. Yes, God has forgiven me. He has redeemed my life. But I don't want you to leave here thinking that because now he's using my story and using my life to benefit others from making that same choice, that it means I still don't mourn. A young girl reached out to me very recently, 15 years old, and said, "I've been watching you and following you for a few years now, and I'm 15 and I'm pregnant. I can't tell my mother. She'll kill me. So I'm having an abortion. I know I probably shouldn't, but I can't have a baby. But Victoria, since I've been watching you, I just so admire you. So I know it'll hurt for a while, but then I'll get over it like you did." Immediately, I asked her for her number. I called her and talked to her on the phone and made sure she understood, just because you think in your mind that I'm okay, I am not. I will grieve the loss of that child until I see that child again. I'm not crippled by my abortion anymore. I have accepted Christ's forgiveness. I've forgiven myself. I've not only forgiven myself, I've forgiven the abortionist. I've forgiven that woman whose first name was Helena. I've forgiven the picketers that I blamed for years, because where were they that day? Where were those people that are praying and telling you there's other options? Nobody was there to stop me. So for over a decade, I got to blame everybody before finally taking responsibility myself. No one dragged me into that abortion clinic. No one kept me from lying on that abortion table. That was the reality I had to come to. I wrote a book called They Lied to Us after I went through my healing process. And the man that was the father of my aborted child and I hadn't spoken since we broke up. And by the way, 9 out of 10 times where an abortion occurs, couples break up. It's so traumatic of an experience staying together. So instead of being reminded of what they've done, they leave each other. So some young women are having abortions to keep their boyfriends or to keep their husbands. And 9 out of 10 of them won't make it anyway after an abortion. I truly believe that I never looked at my boyfriend the same because he was supposed to protect me. He was supposed to love me, but he allowed me to go through with that. And I guarantee you he never looked at me the same way. He probably was thinking in the back of his mind, she actually did it? It changes you. You walk in an abortion clinic one way, but you come back someone totally different. But when my book was coming out, I felt he had the right to know because we had a lot of the same friends. Although by God's grace and mercy, I had not run into him. I picked up a phone and called him. I told him I was going to tell him I changed his name in the book, but I thought he should know about it. But as soon as he answered the phone and I said, "Hi, it's me," he began to weep. Now, understand, all these years, over 10 years before that phone call, I grew to hate him because my mind was convinced I'm the one living with the ramifications of abortion, and he's out there going on about his business and probably never thinks of it. It's the men's fault. It's their fault that we are the ones who suffer through abortion. That was my mentality. And even after I went through healing, I still held on to that hatred I had for this man who was supposed to love and protect me. But when he heard my voice and he began to sob, I could barely understand him when he said, "I've been waiting for this call for over 10 years to beg you for forgiveness. To tell you I should have never allowed you to go there and take the life of our baby. I should have protected you and our child. And I've been haunted by this for over a decade. Can you ever forgive me?" In that moment, I was able to forgive him, which released me from so much oppression. Because we tend to believe if we hold unforgiveness towards someone, it's like us taking poison, but we expect them to die. And I wept with him on the phone and said, "Yes, I forgive you." He said, "I've been in counseling for 8 years dealing with that decision." So in that moment, I forgave him and I was released. But I want you to hear this, especially because there's so many young men in here and adult men. In that instant, God did not only free me from this anger and bitterness that I had rooted in my soul towards this man, but he also shifted my paradigm as to how I view the post-abortive man. And what I realized in that moment is that the only person that isn't hurting in an abortion is not just the woman, it is the man as well. They are hurting too. There have been 60 million abortions in this country since Roe v. Wade. That's 120 million parents, mothers and fathers who've been affected by abortion. When 1 out of 4 women in this country's had an abortion, I can promise you some of you are sitting in this room right now. It made me realize that people like to say, the victim is the baby. These people, you're killing the babies. And yes, the babies are dying. In my belief, those children are immediately with Christ. My baby was at that moment in the arms of Jesus. But there are other victims besides those children. It's the mothers and the fathers. Abortion has 3 victims, not just one. And we cannot forget that there are men and women walking around in our country that are like walking wounded, who don't know where to go for help. And now with these abortion bills, and everybody's talking about abortion in the country like never before, I'm getting the emails from these people. And they're saying to me, it's killing me to turn on the news to hear about abortion because I've never healed from it. I spoke at a men's conference in Orlando, Florida last week. It was all men, and they lined up after I was finished to wait in 85-degree weather to come and tell me, I've never told anyone before. My wife doesn't even know. What can I do to feel better about myself? It's killing me. This secret is killing me. The truth sets us free. And if you or someone you know has had an abortion, I'm going to plead with you to reach out to someone like me, your local pregnancy center, someone here that you trust, and start your way on the path to healing. Because you can live a full life even after abortion. It doesn't mean we forget. That's God's job. We may have to live with things that we do, but we can still function and we can still do amazing things for the kingdom if we allow him to come in and clean up our mess. Yes, I am pro-life. Yes, I am proud of it. And I will fight till the day I die for the unborn. Because the only difference from conception to where you sit in this room right now is your age. That's it. From that moment of conception, you were you. With your own unique DNA, science has proven it. The medical community has proven that these babies feel pain and fear in the womb. Don't buy into the lie that they don't matter or that it's about women's health. Because there's nothing healthy or pro-choice or pro-woman about abortion. Nothing. God bless you guys. Thank you for being here. And I hope you'll come and say hello. Remember, God forgives for all sin because he is graceful, he is merciful, and he loves us to the depths of the sea and even more. Thank you.
Discover who you're called to be at Biola University, a leading Christ-centered university in Los Angeles, with programs on campus and online. Subscribe for more of our videos and learn more at biola.edu.